You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So it is a new month, November, which means we have a new series here on the podcast. So we will be doing 4 episodes this month. I am taking the week of Thanksgiving off, and I hope you are as well. Hopefully you get the whole week off. If not, hopefully just a few days so you can spend time reflecting on what you're grateful for and enjoying it with friends and family and food, of course, right? I adore Thanksgiving. I think it's my favorite holiday. I love Christmas too, though. Tough toss up. But anyways, so for this month, for November, I was trying to think about what I wanted to talk about with you guys. And I decided that I really want to talk to you about being a team player. So this profession can feel so isolating at times, especially if you're the only counselor at your school site. And oftentimes, we talk about advocating for your role and sticking up for the profession. And it seems like a lot to do, especially if you're by yourself. So that's what's really important, to make sure that we have a good team of colleagues and support around us at school. So this month, we're going to talk about how you can be a team player in a few different areas. And this week, we're going to talk specifically about how you can be a team player and collaborate with teachers. My first year counseling, I was at 2 school sites. And one of the sites had a very established staff and faculty. These teachers had been there for years. Like, they had students who they had taught their parents. So they were like, the age of grandmothers, and they multi-generations of the school, and primarily women, and they were just like the bosses, right? So coming in as a young new school counselor, I was very intimidated by this team. They all ended up being nice, most of them. But it was intimidating, and I kind of got the vibe that it was like teacher versus counselor, because I remember my principal, he was new to the school also, and he was like, hey, I really want us to focus on this book to plan the character lessons around. So can you present this at the first staff meeting? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I, got the book, got all excited about it, talked about it at the staff meeting, thought I had a lot of good ideas, and it was met with zilch, crickets. Everyone's like, we've been doing second step forever, so what about that? And I was like, well, the principal wants us to do this, but they didn't want it to. And anyways, it ended up being like we were kind of torn there. So I kind of felt like the teachers were against me, and that I was constantly trying to win their affection and approval, and just to kind of prove my worth as the school counselor. So hopefully you don't feel like that. That's only been one school in my experience. Overall, I've had a pretty good time with the teachers, and even there it got better. But that example is to say that you may feel this way. I know if I felt this way, then maybe some of you listeners feel this way as well. And that's why I think it's important to talk about how we can collaborate with teachers and really use them, as an asset, as a friend, as a colleague, and how we can really help each other and in turn help the student. And that's the overall goal, right? So I have 6 strategies you can use to be a team player when it comes to collaborating with teachers. Okay, let's dive in. First up, build morale. So this year more than ever, the last couple years, I know teachers have really tough, right? The demands are ever changing. We are teaching and educating our kiddos in a school climate that is unprecedented. And so we need to support them. And a lot of times it can just feel downright discouraging. So I know the teachers that I was working with felt this way pre-pandemic, so I know it's even worse now. And they could just use a little morale booster. So you can be that person for them. Put some inspiring signs in the staff lounge. It sounds cheesy, but it can be effective. Play some little games at staff meetings, even if you're doing like a meet the counselor introduction game or something similar. If you're talking to them about a new topic, make it fun, cheer them up, throw in like a pop culture trivia question, or just get everybody loosened up and laughing a little bit. You could also do some inexpensive gifts. So the holidays are coming up, maybe give them like a candy and a little cute note, or just like a thinking of you, some sticky notes. It can be really inexpensive, and a really nice thought, and to show that you are in support of them and you are empathizing with them and you are on their team. You could even help organize like a staff secret Santa or something like that. Something fun to boost spirits, not just in the holidays, but all year round, little morale boosters. And if you were listening, I know some of you who are listening are previous teachers, current counselors. I would love to hear your input on this topic as we're talking about collaborating with teachers, because you know better than anyone, because you bring the perspective of a teacher as well. I love when teachers turn into counselors. I think they bring such a unique perspective. Super great. Okay. Tip number 2, train and teach. So another way that you can collaborate with teachers is to train and teach them. So you can, sometimes when we think of our caseload, some of you will email me and say like, Rachel, I feel stretched too thin. I have 500 kids on my caseload. And I know how you feel. I have totally been there. But think about how you can train people to train kids, if that makes sense. So of course, some kids you're going to see in groups and individuals, and you're seeing all your kids do your class lessons. But like your class lesson kids, for example, you may be some of those kids you're only seeing once a month, right? Or twice a month. So what you can do is you can train the teachers on these school-wide initiatives like we talked about last month, or on coping skills, or on some social emotional topics that you think your teachers need to be better trained in or equipped with. Maybe you can either attend a training with them at like a district level, or you can provide some literature or videos, or do like a brief presentation, or help organize someone to come in to do some PD. But somehow train and teach the teachers how they can better help the kids. Because if I know teachers, they have a heart for helping, right? That's likely why they are in the profession as well. So of course they want to actually teach the students the academic skills, but they really just love kids and want to help kids. And sometimes they don't feel like they're equipped to do so. So you can help them by teaching them these things. So for example, what I mean by this is you could, do a little workshop. You could make it where it's teachers can sign up if they want to. Like, hey, I'm going to be doing a workshop on how you can use zones of regulation in your classroom. Or, hey, I'm going to be doing a workshop on how you can use restorative practices in your classroom. Or something like that. You might be surprised at a teacher buy-in for this. So training and teaching. Another way you can do this is help them set up calm down corners in their classrooms. So you could have like a workshop where you talk about, coping skills, and then you could all assemble little coping skills toolboxes together, like plastic bins with a few calm down tools in them. And you could, provide them with a few mindfulness scripts, or things that come so easy and naturally to you as the counselor because you're constantly reaching for them and pulling for them, may not come as easy to the teachers because they're, spending their free time in the evenings and weekends looking up, reading tips or math skills strategies, not necessarily the social emotional things, but that doesn't mean that they're not interested. Okay. Tip 3 on how to collaborate with teachers is to create a personalized experience for them. Now, what I mean by this, and this definitely isn't going to be every teacher, but you have those few teachers who are really supportive of the counseling program, and maybe you kind of click and you have a little bond with them. And I know I had a few like this, and they were constantly referring kids to me, and I just really appreciated what I was doing and wanted, to collaborate as much as possible. So what you can do is offer this to more teachers. Say, look, guys, these are some things I can offer you that you may not know about. This is a personalized experience that I can do for you. In general, I'm doing a class lesson every month on these character traits, right? Your monthly class lessons. But more personal level, I can consult with you. I can do a consultation if you have a student who you want to just like pick my brain about some strategies. Maybe they're not necessarily referring them for counseling, but maybe they just want you to come in and do an observation and then maybe give them some suggestions on behavior strategies or something like that. So you could do consultations. You could also do as needed class lessons. I have done this at all my schools. It's so awesome. And the teachers are so appreciative of this resource. For example, I had a second grade teacher who had students struggling with sportsmanship. They were fighting, recess, playing soccer. So she's like, hey, can you come in and do a lesson on sportsmanship? So that was not part of my character calendar, for the year, but I did her an extra lesson that month. Or one time I did one on cyber safety when we found out some kids were struggling with appropriate internet use. That's a really cool thing that you can offer. And you could have like a sign up, I know you don't have a ton of time to do personalized lessons for everyone, but a couple a year as they come in, high needs topics. It's just a really cool thing you can offer. If you feel like you're stretched too thin and you don't have the time, you could, maybe forward them a lesson that they could share with the class or give them a few ideas. Again, that consultation piece. And lastly, you can help assist with conferences. So they're having parent-teacher conferences. If you're seeing one of their students individually or in a group, maybe offer to sit in the conference or come in at the end and, share the social emotional piece. Or you could kind of brief with them before they meet with the parent on some suggestions you would like them to have. Okay, guys, so that was number 3. I hope you're loving these. I'm excited talking about them. Number 4. Simplify. So like we said, teachers are feeling overwhelmed. They have a lot on their plates, and you don't want to overwhelm them by, making things harder than they need to be. So for example, class lesson signups. We want teachers to, let us come in for class lessons, and you may experience pushback on this. So you want to make it as simple and as easy as possible for them so they don't even have to think about it. You don't want them to have to add it to their list like, deal with scheduling class lessons or find time for my students to go to counseling group or whatever. You don't want it to be difficult for them. We want to support them by making it simple. So an example of how I like to do this is with Calendly. I've talked about Calendly a lot on the podcast. It's a free platform where you can schedule meetings. So you can schedule your lessons or class sessions that way. That's a really cool way without the back and forth email, where you're just, wasting time and energy from everybody. Instead, just send a link, they sign up, done. Super simple. Another way you can help your teachers simplify is digital forms. So instead of having a lot of paper back and forth, like, I printed a paper and put it in your box. Can you please fill it out and put it in my box and blah, blah, blah. No, send them a Google form. They can do it on the spot, like a questionnaire about a student, and then send it back to you. That's a great way to use technology to help simplify any of the processes or systems that you're using with teachers. Because like we said, they have a lot on their plate. Help them out. Simplify. Okay, number 5, socialize. So like I said in my example at the beginning of this episode, I was intimidated by our teachers, and I, would honestly eat lunch in my office. I've always liked to eat lunch in my office. Sometimes I'll have lunch bunch with kids in there. Sometimes kids come by. Sometimes I'm just using my lunch break to look up something personal on my computer. You know how it is. So, or just chilling for a second because you've been talking to kids all day. But it is nice to make an effort and to maybe sit in the teacher's lounge. I have mixed feelings on this. I think it's nice to make an effort and to collaborate and to get to know teachers on a personal level. But also it can be tricky because sometimes in the lounge it gets toxic and people are just talking, complaining about students, or they only want to talk to you about problems they're having with their students. So I encourage you to socialize. So to try to establish, relationships with the teachers and to take interest in their personal lives, and you can get to know each other a little better. But if it gets to be kind of in that toxic place of trash talking students or people, only trying to talk to you about work stuff while you're trying to eat your lunch, then you need to set that boundary. So it can be a little tricky with the boundaries, but I've had some wonderful friends who are teachers. So you definitely want, one of my best friends is actually a teacher. So you want to socialize, get to know them. They're awesome. And finally, the 6th tip I have for you when it comes to being a team player with teachers and collaborating is to empathize. So remember, like I said, these teachers always have so much on their plates, right? I think society would agree that this profession as a teacher is super challenging, super undervalued, super underpaid. So we want to make them feel valued and appreciated and loved. That way they have their cup full so they can then in turn give it to our kiddos. So we want to empathize with them, understand their struggles, understand that their time is, spread really thin. Sometimes we only see the small piece that we're involved in. So for example, I have an example from when I was working. I remember this vividly. I was my second year counseling, and I had the PRIM, which is the Pre-Referral Intervention Manual. It's kind of like the counseling Bible. I love the PRIM. We'll link to it in the show notes if you want to check it out. It's a thick book we had to get in grad school, and I ended up using it a lot. It has really good concrete strategies. You can basically just look up a problem that a kid's having, and you have it's mostly behavior related, but then you have a list of concrete strategies you can try before referring them, right? A pre-referral manual. So it's a really cool resource. So I had the student I was working with. I'm seeing her individually. And then I get out my PRIM and I'm looking at some of her behavior problems. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think we should try these like 5 or 10 things first. And then we'll, before we move forward in referring her out for services. So I am pumped. I print out the page. I highlight 10 things on it that I think the teacher should try. To me, they seem like doable and that they're going to work. And I'm feeling really confident about this. And I go present it. And the teacher was already at a place of frustration with the student and felt like she was spending a lot of time with the student compared to her other kiddos. So it was already stressful for her. And then I'm like, oh, I think we should do all of these things for the student. And I didn't realize at the time, but it was almost like I was giving her like a laundry list of to-dos or demands that I thought she should do in addition to all of her other million things that she was doing. So thankfully I believe it was our admin or another teacher or specialist or something was kind of like, hey, let's try, one at a time or this instead, or see how we can present this in a different way. And I'm so appreciative for that advice, because then I stepped back and I was like, whoa, what I was excited about it. I was only seeing my small piece of the puzzle, but to her, it was just, one more thing we were asking her to do. So you want to be really careful about that, and you really want to empathize with teachers, right? So I hope you guys found that helpful as you're collaborating with teachers. Again, I would love to know what strategies you use. Send me a message on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling. I'd love to connect with you over there, and I will talk to you next week, where I will be sharing about how you can be a team player when it comes to building parent relationships.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.